Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at EX01 or the Classic Collection, and I think the Classic Collection is a pretty fun set to be playing around with because it's acting as like a legacy support set. So what that means is it's just supporting lots of older decks and lots of older cards and giving some new life and blood into them with more tech and tools and possibilities. And in today's deck profile, I'm going to be highlighting the new tech and tools and possibilities brought to the Diaboromon deck. So Diaboromon got its last big wave of updates in BT05, and it had a Kurisarimon promo in BT06 to kind of keep it along, and now it's back in full force again with the Classic Collection cards because we have a brand new evolution line for Diaboromon to be playing around with, adding to his overall tech and tools, because what Diaboromon is doing as a whole is he is a token spawning deck, and you're going to be able to utilize those tokens in various different ways, and the more options we have to use those tokens, the more powerful he gets as a deck as a whole. So I think this is going to be a very fun and very powerful deck, and there's lots of different ways that you could build it, all depending on the different Diaboromon that you want to be running, and the cards that you want to be supporting the deck with. So without further ado, onto the deck profile. Starting off with the Digitama, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Tsumemon. So this is the BT02 version of Tsumemon, and this Tsumemon is really good because it's acting as one of the primary ways we're going to be DP boosting our Digimon in the deck. So its inheritable ability states that during your turn, while you have another Digimon in play with the same name as this Digimon, then this Digimon's going to get plus 2000 DP. So that's really good because the whole idea is we're going to be spawning Diaboromon tokens, and then those Diaboromon tokens are also counted as Diaboromon. So our tokens with this card underneath our main Diaboromon is going to make that Diaboromon that much stronger, and one of the big weaknesses to Diaboromon is the fact that they don't have a whole lot of high DP, so any way we have to increase it efficiently is really, really good and really, really valuable. And then as far as the secondary Digitama of the deck, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Tsumemon. So this is the BT05 version of Tsumemon, and this is a really good card because it's acting as a good way to help draw cards in the deck. So I do prioritize DP boosting over the draw just because we have so many other ways to draw cards in the deck, but this Tsumemon is still really good to have for the deck just because its inheritable ability states that when attacking once per turn, if this Digimon has unidentified in its type, then we get to draw 1 card, meaning we don't necessarily need to wait all the way up into our Mega in order to start swinging and gaining benefits with this card, so we could aggress with some of our lower level Digimon because they're unidentified for the most part, and that will allow us to try to help draw cards in case we don't have ways of drawing cards efficiently in the early game. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Caramon. So this is the BT02 version of Caramon, and this Caramon is going to be the primary draw engine for the deck. So what this card is doing that's so powerful is it has a nice inheritable ability, not limited to once per turn, where during your turn, when you play another Digimon with the same name as this Digimon, then you get to draw 1 card. So the whole idea is if our Diaboromon is going to spawn Diaboromon tokens, then we get to draw for each one of those tokens being spawned, and we have numerous different ways of being able to spawn Diaboromon tokens, allowing us to draw cards hyper efficiently as long as we're in a Diaboromon. And that's what's making this card so good, is just the fact that we have different ways of being able to spawn tokens, and every time we're spawning a token, we're getting some sort of benefit for doing so. So this is a really good engine card for the deck as a result. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Chuman. So Chuman is just the off-tech card of the deck, and this could really be anything you feel like you want it to be. I just think Chuman is still really important just because memory manipulation is really, really rampant in the game as of BT06, thanks to all of the memory boost cards and the continued use of memory boost cards, on top of any other Digimon that's actually trying to gain memory to try to make themselves more efficient. This card is really good because it could lock down those types of strategies and those types of cards. So what this card is doing more specifically is he has this nice ability where during all turns, your opponent can't gain memory except by tamer effects, really limiting their memory manipulating shenanigans on anything outside of a tamer, and that could be pretty brutal or devastating to the opponent if Chuman is not dealt with. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Keramon. So this is the BT05 version of Keramon, and this Keramon is going to act as the stereotypical digger for the deck. So what this card is doing is he has this nice on-play ability where we get to reveal the top 5 cards of our deck, then we get to add 1 Digimon with unidentified in its type and 1 Arata Sanada from among them into our hand, and then place the rest onto the bottom in any order. So this is just looking for basically any of your unidentified Digimon, which is basically almost every Digimon in your deck, and it's also adding your main tamer, which is really good because we need our tamer to be set up as quickly and efficiently as we possibly can, so that way we can get as much value off of our tamer as we possibly can because of the synergy that the tamer has with the deck, making this Keramon just a really good card to be using. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Caramon. So this is the brand new EX01 Caramon, or Classic Caramon, and this Caramon has a nice inheritable ability where during your turn, for each other Digimon you have in play with the same name as this Digimon, then this Digimon gains plus 1000 DP, so this is just another way to try to DP boost your Digimon to make your Diaboromons as strong as they possibly can, and the more tokens we have on the field, the stronger this ability gets. So this is just going to be a really good card to be using for that inheritable ability, on top of the fact that, well, it's a Caramon and it has unidentified in its type, so it has just lots of natural synergy with the deck already. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Kurasariman. So this is the BT02 version of Kursarimon, and this Kursarimon is acting as another value engine card for the deck because it's similar to its Keramon from BT02. Its inheritable ability also isn't limited to once per turn, where during your turn, when you play another Digimon with the same name as this Digimon, then you get to gain 1 memory. So whenever you're basically going to be spawning a Diaboromon token, you're going to be gaining a memory back, and the more tokens we spawn, the more memory we could gain, making our cards that much more efficient. So this is just a very powerful card to be playing with the deck, just because we have lots of different ways that we could use this card. And the fact that we're gaining memory is never a bad thing, allowing us to enhance and extend some of our plays or make our plays that much more efficient. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Kurisarimon. So this is the BT05 version of Kurisarimon, and this Kurisarimon is really good because he has 2 abilities to him. He has an ability native to him and an inheritable ability, and both are really strong. So what the ability he has native to him is a when digivolving ability, where if you don't have an Arata Sanada card in play, then you could play one from your hand for free. So this is just the easiest way we could play our first Arata, is just try to hard play our Caramon to try to dig it out, and then use this Kurisarimon to digivolve into, to then play said Arata that we just dug out. So that's like the whole intended purpose, and it's just one of the most efficient ways that we have to play our tamers outside of it coming from our security. And then on top of that, its inheritable ability is also really powerful, acting as one of the primary win conditions for the deck, because its inheritable ability states that during your turn, all your other Digimon with the same name as this Digimon gain the Rush ability. So this is just really powerful because the turn we digivolve into our Diaboromon, if we're able to spawn lots of different tokens, then we could give all of those tokens the Rush ability, and that's just allowing us to add some extra aggression onto the opponent, allowing us to attack with the tokens we spawn right away with. So between those 2 abilities, this card is just absolutely insane for the deck to be running. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Kursarimon. So this is the Classic Collection version of Kurisarimon, and this Kursarimon is really good because it has, well, a strong inheritable ability that just synergizes with what the deck is trying to do. So its inheritable ability states that during your turn, once per turn, when another one of your Digimon with the same name as this Digimon is deleted, then we get to unsuspend this Digimon. So this pairs up really nicely with just us being able to spawn Diaboromon tokens. If we're able to swing in with our Diaboromon tokens, then those Diaboromon tokens, because they have low DP, hopefully they'll end up dying, allowing our main Diaboromon to restand and attack once more. So that's just what's making this card really powerful, and there's a couple of different Diaboromons that this card really synergizes with, but because of that type of synergy is a little bit more limited, that's why I'm only running it at 2, just because we do have very limited ways that we can make this card good. But when this card is really good, oh man, it could really give the deck an extra punch that the opponent might not be expecting. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Kursarimon. So this is the Dash Pack promo version of Kurasariman that's supposed to come alongside of BT06, and this Kursarimon is acting as some extra resilience for the deck, allowing your Diaboromons to try to stay on the field as long as they possibly can, and we really need that because without our Diaboromon, the deck does just kind of stumble and fumble along, and that's not necessarily the greatest thing in the world, so any form of extra defense that we have to keep our Digimon around is usually really, really good. So what this card is doing is it has the nice inheritable ability where during all turns, all your other Digimon with the same name as this Digimon gain the Decoy Black and White ability. So this is really important because basically it just makes our Diaboromons act as sacrificial fodder for our main Diaboromon, so that way when our Diaboromon is trying to be deleted by card effects, then we could use the Decoy ability to delete the token instead, so that way we could keep our main Diaboromon around. So the big thing with Decoy that we have to keep in mind, it is only for effects that are deleting the Digimon. So the abilities to DP reduce, bounce, tuck, and attack into are still making the Digimon vulnerable, but the fact that we do have some protection is better than no protection at all. Next, on to the ultimates, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Infermon. So this Infermon is the BT02 Infermon, and this Infermon is still pretty good just because it's allowing us to Digivolve into our Diaboromons more efficiently than some of our other Digimon. So what his ability is stating more specifically is during your turn, when this Digimon Digivolves into a Diaboromon from our hand, then we get to reduce the memory cost of the Digivolution by 1. So that's really good because it's just trying to make playing our Diaboromon and Digivolving up into our Diaboromon as efficient as we possibly can, so that way we could try to use our Diaboromons to their utmost potential. So I really do like what this Infermon is doing for the deck as a result. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Infermon. So this is the BT05 version of Infermon, and this Infermon is pretty good because it's acting as a solid warping point in case we don't see any of our champions. Unfortunately, our champions are all very, very valuable for the deck, and we kind of do need to see them, which is why I'm not like super thrilled with the warp, but sometimes you do just need an easy way to get up into your Diaboromon, and the warp potential is really nice because we could Digivolve this card on top of one of our Keramons for 4 and ignoring the rest of its Digivolution requirements. So that's just really good because it's an easy way to get into an ultimate, on top of the fact that it has a nice inheritable ability of an on-delete ability where we get to play 1 Diaboromon token for free. So when our main Diaboromon is going to die, or if this is even just a secondary Diaboromon on the field is going to die, then we get to spawn a Diaboromon token for dying, and that's still pretty decent because we need to try to keep our Diaboromons on the field to take advantage of the Diaboromon name, so that's making this Infermon still a really good card to be running. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Infermon. So this is the Classic Collection version of Infermon, and this Infermon is really powerful because it has 2 very strong abilities. So its native ability is during the opponent's turn, once per turn, when an opponent Digivolves into a level 5 or higher Digimon, then we get to gain 1 memory, which is effectively taking away 1 memory from the opponent, making their Digivolution essentially cost 1 more, so that could be pretty brutal because now it's making the opponent's Digimon even less effective than normal, and this is a pretty good card to be running to try to stall out the opponent, and as a result, that's making this card really, really good to just sit passively on the field. And then on top of that, it also has a really nice inheritable ability where during all turns, all your other Digimon with the same name as this Digimon gain plus 2000 DP, making basically all of your other Diaboromons, tokens, not tokens, doesn't matter. It's just making your other Diaboromons that much stronger when you use. So both of those elements combined is just making this card a very strong card to be using as a result. Next, on to the Megas, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Diaboromon. So this is the BT02 Diaboromon, and I really do want to try to run more of this Diaboromon in the deck just because I think he's really good, but I think all of the other Diaboromons are really good too, but I do think you could play around with the ratios to try to run more of this card because I think this card is actually really good for what the deck is trying to do. So what this card is doing is he has a nice when attacking ability where you get to play 1 Diaboromon token for free. So just on attack, spawning a token is very, very strong, especially since we have have the new Kurasariman that allows us to basically restand for one of our tokens being deleted. So that's really, really powerful because we could line up multiple different ways for this card to multi-swing, and we're going to be spawning a token each time this card is swinging. And then on top of that, we do have just other synergies for when we play our Diaboromon tokens, and this is one of the easier ways to recursively trigger those types of abilities. So that's just what's making this card really, really good, and he also has a nice ability where during all turns, when this Digimon would be deleted by battle, then we get to delete one of our other Diaboromons to prevent this Digimon from being deleted, acting as some extra forms of protection. So this paired up with the decoy black and white ability from the promo Kurisarimon is also making this card that much more resilient and harder for the opponent to deal with. So I do think that this Diaboromon is really, really fantastic for everything that the deck is trying to do. As a result, the only downside compared to him versus all of the other Diaboromons is he has 10,000 DP, which is why I think running DP boosting is really, really important for the deck, ensuring that he's going to be as strong as we could possibly make him. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Diaboromon. So this is the BT05 version of Diaboromon, and this Diaboromon is a pretty solid Diaboromon to be running because he has this nice when digivolving ability where we get to play a Diaboromon token. So that's really important because playing the Diaboromon token will trigger lots of our various other abilities, all depending on what our stack is looking like. So we could use this to just spawn a Diaboromon token to trigger those abilities, and that's what's making this card really good, on top of him just being a generic Diaboromon for us to be playing around with. And then the last level 6 of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Diaboromon. So this is the Classic Collection version of Diaboromon, and this is just another really solid Diaboromon to be running because of what this card is doing. So this Diaboromon has the nice security ability, so that's a big change up, where we get to play a Diaboromon token for free. So when this card's checked in our security, we get a Diaboromon token, and that's pretty strong because, well, it's getting a Diaboromon onto the field. And then it has another really powerful ability where during the opponent's turn, all of your Diaboromon gain the blocker ability. So this is where the primary defense of the deck is going to be, so we want to try to get into this Diaboromon and then spawn some Diaboromon tokens so that way they could have the blocker ability. So that's just what's making this Diaboromon really good, so that way we could try to wall out the opponent based on the number of Diaboromons we could spawn and potentially continuously spawn, so that way we have a recursive wall forming of Diaboromons. So I do think that this card is really good as a result, and we could tailor-make the deck to accommodate him a little bit better. So there's just lots of different ways that you could build the deck depending on your mega lineup and what you want to be prioritizing. And then the last mega and only level 7 of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Armageddemon. So Armageddemon is still just an absolutely insane card for us to be playing around with because, well, he is a level 7 that we could play for 3 with his ability to sacrifice a Diaboromon to reduce his play cost by 12. So that's really, really powerful because the more tokens we spawn, the higher chance that we could use this card to his utmost potential because he also has the rush ability. So when we sacrifice our Diaboromon to hard play him, then he could swing right away, and that's really, really powerful, allowing us to have as much aggression as we possibly can, especially considering he is also a Digimon that has 15,000 DP. And then on top of all of that, he has another really powerful ability where during all turns, when digivolving abilities of level 7 Digimon don't activate. So this just shuts down the opponent's when digivolving abilities on a lot of the level 7s, and, well, most level 7s have when digivolving abilities, because most of the time you're going to end up passing the turn when you digivolve into them, so Armageddemon shutting those out is really, really powerful. So this is a great anti-meta card just because certain decks do want to take advantage of their level 7s, and Armageddemon won't let them. So this is just a really good card to be using for the deck as a whole because of all of the different synergies that we have, not only just with our Diaboromons, but he could help line up certain lines of play to not only act as some extra aggression, but to allow us to form some really good combo plays because of the new Kursarimon. So that's another aspect of this card that's making it really good, is depending on how you build the deck and what you're doubling down and focusing on, this card could be absolutely insane for you to be playing around with. Next, onto the options, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Ultimate Flare. So Ultimate Flare is just one of the best black removal options that we have access to, so why not run it? what this card is doing is it has the nice main ability where we get to de-digivolve 3 on one of the opponent's Digimon, and then we get to delete all of the opponent's Digimon that have a play cost of 3 or less. So it's acting as a mini board nuke on top of de-digivolving the opponent's main Digimon, so that way we could try to delete it, because we're de-digivolving it hopefully into a rookie that will be deleted with the ability. So even at worst, if it's not deleting the main Digimon we're de-digivolving, then it's still just making it so that card isn't going to be technically on the field. So we're still reducing the amounts of threats that the opponent has on the field. And then on top of that, it has the nice security ability of activating its main effect, so that way it could be really, really powerful as a security threat as well, because we also do have the new Diaboromon to be playing around with as another card to add to our overall security threats. And then speaking of black removal, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Iron Fisted Onslaught. So Iron Fisted Onslaught is the best black removal card that we have, because it just has the very powerful main ability where we get to delete all of the opponent's Digimon with the highest play cost. So if they're all tied for the highest play cost, then he'll just delete all of them, and that's just really powerful, acting as a great equalizer to delete the opponent's strongest Digimon. So that's really, really powerful levels of removal, and it even has the nice security ability to activate its main. So again, it's just another security threat for the opponent to deal with, and I do like the different options that we have to be playing around with, so that way we could try to deal with as many different threats as we possibly can. And then the last card of the deck is going to be the only tamer of the deck, and that's going to be 4 copies of Arata Sanada. So Arata Sanada is the main tamer of the deck, and this card, well, just synergizes very nicely with what Diaboromon wants to do as a whole. So he has this nice ability where at the start of your turn, if you have a Digimon with unidentified in its type in your trash, then you get to gain 1 memory. So he's going to be acting as the way we're going to be fixing our memory. Even though it's going to start off relatively slow and weak, it's going to build up the more Aratas we have in play, because this ability does stack, making it very easy for us to play our cards, just because he can help fix our memory. And then on top of that, he also has this nice ability where during your turn, when one of your Digimon digivolves into a Diaboromon, then we get to spawn a Diaboromon token by suspending this tamer. So every time we're going to be trying to digivolve into our Diaboromon, for each Arata that we have in play, we get to suspend them to spawn more Diaboromon tokens, which is basically what the deck wants to do, because we want to try to spawn as many Diaboromon tokens as we humanly possibly can to do various different things with. So the fact that Arata is not only gaining us some memory, but spawning us Diaboromon tokens, just make him the most ideal tamer for us to be playing, with the security ability of being able to play it for free. So even when it's checked in security at worst, we're still getting a tamer on the field to try to help our natural game plan along. And then there's still just a whole bunch of different things that you could do with the deck, all depending on how you want to build the deck, the tools that you have access to, and what you actually want to gain out of the deck. So if you want to run an alternate Digitama, then Pagumon is one of the best, if not the best, alternate Digitama, just because his on-delete ability helps us dig for our black Digimon, which is pretty good. And then on top of that, we have Toy Agumon to have Reboot. Then we also have Junkmon to be interacting with more on-delete abilities if we want to go into that direction, because he has the on-delete ability of gaining a memory, which is pretty good. And then we also have the Promo Keramon, which is really good for our blocker synergy, just because it has the inheritable ability to DP boost our Digimon on the opponent's turn. You could run Starmons just because we are trying to flood the field with Diaboromon tokens, so Starmons is going to take advantage of that and DP reduce for each Digimon we have in play, so that's just really, really good as a whole. On top of the fact that we have various other blockers that we could run in the deck, so if you want to add some mid-level defense instead of having it be all on the late game, then Mechanorimon is one of the best blockers we could play around with, just because he could block multiple Digimon in a single turn, and that's really good. On top of the fact that we also have Shadebon as a really good card to synergize with the deck, because not only is it unidentified, but it's a security Digimon as well, so it's just adding to the overall defense and security threats that we could be playing around with. Then we also do have the promo Kurasariman from the Tournament Pack 1, and well, this card is just okay just because it's a Kurasariman and unidentified and blocker. So it's not like it's the worst card in the world to be running, it's just a card you could think about running depending on your build and how you're actually building it. Then we do have some other really decent level 5s we could be playing around with in the form of Warumonzemon. So this card is literally just the black version of Monzemon, and we're just using it for its overall efficiency. We also have the promo Infermon that we could be thinking about running, just because we might want to sit around on the Classic Collection Infermon, and that just makes playing this Infermon that much more efficient because of all of our name-based synergies. So what this Infermon is doing is he has an on-play ability where we get to de-digivolve one of the opponent's Digimon by one stage, and that's just really good, acting as some really solid, I guess not necessarily removal, but annoyance or hindrance for the opponent to try to keep a good Digimon around. Then if you are doubling down on the blocker aspect, we could consider running Craniamon just because he adds that extra protection to all of our blockers, which is really, really good. And then on top of that, we do have the promo Diaboromon that we could think about running to add even more aggression into the deck, on top of which he is a black Digimon, so you could use a little bit more black-based synergies. Then we do have some very good options that we could consider running in the deck if you don't like my option lineup. So you could consider running Catastrophe Cannon just because if we have our Diaboromons on our field, which is even easier to get now thanks to our security Diaboromon. So we could use this card to not only de-digivolve 2 on one of the opponent's Digimon, but if we have a Diaboromon in play, then we get to spawn another Diaboromon token, which isn't a bad thing with the security ability of activating its main, so it's always going to be a potential threat for the opponent to be worrying about. Then if we are playing around with more on delete synergies, just because we have various other ways to delete our Digimon, we could consider running Parabolic Junk to try to gain some additional memory for our Digimon being deleted. So this card combos really nicely with Armageddemon because we could put it on a token and then sacrifice that token to basically gain the 2 memory, making Armageddemon that much more efficient to be playing, or we could just put it on one of our Diaboromon tokens to try to swing with and have it get deleted in the security or through our various other abilities. Then you could also consider running Black Memory Boost to try to dig out your mid-stage cards, so that way we could try to climb into Diaboromon as efficiently as we possibly can, because it also has the main ability of Delay to gain us the 2 memory at a later turn, so that way we can make a very powerful push turn when we feel like we need to or when we're ready to. Then if you are running some yellow cards in the deck, you could also consider running Spiral Masquerade because, well, it's acting very similar to Starmon's, where it's taking advantage of our wide field that we could set up with our Diaboromon tokens. But if you want to go for some more black tamers, we do have Izzy that you could consider running because he is one of the best memory-fixing tamers that black has access to. And then we also have access to Izzy and Joe. What we're really using this card for is just to try to gain some additional memory, because he has a very powerful ability where at the start of your turn, if the opponent has 2 or more Digimon in play, then we get to gain 2 memory, so we could just potentially gain lots of memory to make even more powerful plays happen. And then if you do want to tech in a couple of white tamers just for some counter tech or anti-tech, then you could consider running Takumi. So if you are trying to draw some cards, then Takumi is a fantastic way to try to draw some cards. And the primary reason we would use him is to try to make it so that the opponent doesn't rush us down with low-level Digimon. And then on top of that, we also have access to Analog Youth to just be another really good anti-medic type card. So it has a very easy to use on playability to make our plays as efficiently as we possibly can, acting as some more consistency for the deck. And then on top of that, what we're really using the card for is his All Turns ability. When one of your level 5 or higher Digimon with Digivolution sources in it is deleted, then we get to suspend this tamer to gain a memory and hatch one of our Digi-Eggs into an empty space in our breeding area. So this is basically half of a raising phase where if we moved out one of our Digimon and then our Digimon dies for whatever reason, the most likely cause of their death would be from us swinging into the security and it kills them. So we get to basically hatch another Digi-Egg to try to rebuild as quickly as we possibly can with. So this is just very, very powerful of an ability to be playing around with because it can help turbo out our raising area, and it's a good deterrent for decks like Security Control because we're going to try to aggress into them as much as we possibly can and gain some benefit for our Digimon being deleted. Even though we don't want them to be deleted, it's not like we're losing everything because of this card. So between all of our different cards, we could basically tech in for whatever meta we feel like we're going to be up against, and that's just the adding to the overall depth that Diaboromon has because we have so many different options to be playing around with to tackle various different situations. But for the most part, this is just what the Diaboromon deck is kind of looking like. Like I said, there is just a whole bunch of different ways that you could build the deck depending on your Diaboromon lineup. So there's just a lot of depth and diversity on how you could build the deck. But at the end of the day, the deck is still doing relatively the same thing, which is trying to spawn as many tokens as you possibly can and use those tokens in various different ways to aggress onto the opponent or be able to stall out the opponent, so that way you could figure out alternate ways to be able to aggress. So it's just a very powerful strategy that, thanks to the Classic Collection, only got better, and that's all making the deck very fun to not only play, but to build as well. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.